Thank you for being here. It's our 174th monthly event. It's our third virtual event. And we are looking forward to being with you again next month. Mark your calendar. It's November 17th. The only program we have on tap so far is going to be the King Ranch in Kingsville, and they're going to, Tom Langscheid is going to give us some information about their nature tourism program. We'll have other segments to include as well. But for now, I want to go ahead and introduce Joelle Humphreys. Joelle Humphreys is the director of the Harlingen Arts and Heritage Museum. And we're going to see a video put together through the help with Valerie Bates and Wanda Greenhill, and it's about the renovation of the new HEB Harlingen Historical Museum. Okay, Joelle.
Well, we started this project a number of years ago, I guess about 5-6 years ago. We kind of backed into it. We had received some funding for a cap assessor's grant at the same time that the board at the time had begun to engage in the long-range strategic planning process. And one of the things that stuck out to us and in the cap assessment as well was what we called the historical building. That building was part of the Harlingen Air Force Base that was open here from 1941 to 1962. The exhibits that were in there had been in the same shape since the mid 80s, you know, so obviously presentation style changes, aesthetics change. It was time to make some changes back there. We started with the floor. We were pulling out some exhibits, and it came to light that some of the tiling back there had been put down with that black mastic, which contains asbestos. So we had some choices to make there. So the decision was made to pull out all of the flooring, encapsulate where there was a problem. But in the process of doing that, of course, all the exhibits have to come down. Everything's got to be photographed, cataloged, crated up. And so then it was time to make a decision as to whether we were in for a penny or in for a pound. And so at that point, we decided to move forward. They say that time is money, and we didn't have a lot of money, so it's taken quite a bit of time. But the video that you're going to see is actually our two consultants, our two designers, Jessica and Tim McBride, and they have been absolutely great in working with the volunteers, city staff, and I in getting us moving forward. I do want to make one comment because I was watching the video yesterday, and there's a point where Jessica and Tim talk about kind of a museum within a museum. And what I want to tell you is that the building that we call the HEB Historical Building now was, when it was an Air Force base, was the Air Command Squadron and Brig for the base here in town. So when they talk about that museum within the museum, you're actually in what was the jail of the Brig at that time. So I think the rest of it is self-explanatory, and I hope you guys like it.
My name is Jessica McBride. I'm the head designer, and I do a lot of fabrication and a lot of the graphics, a lot of different things. I do photography as well. And this is my husband, Tim.
And I assist Jessica. I help her on some of the production and project management. I work with the contractors that do a lot of the assembly and carpentry within the project, so I help out with those parts. We're located in the historical museum section. It's a new exhibit. It's in development. There's a series of about 43 exhibits. Well, the fauna and flora is something that we think a lot of people are going to enjoy, because Harlingen is very rich, not just historically, but it's very rich when it comes to nature and wildlife. And so we wanted to create something that would kind of give that a lot of attention. And so the fauna and flora section is going to do just that. It's going to showcase a lot of information on the wildlife we have, the fauna, the flora, the birds, and of course the vegetation. And this piece is unique because Jessica came at it to give it a look and feel that was not, give it not just a two-dimensional, but something more tactile. So it actually included a fabricated mesquite tree that was actually handmade and created over the course of a couple of months. and then blended in with more of the photography visuals. The real imagery and everything is going to be a lot smoother and cleaner and they'll blend well together. In fact, all the grass that is going to be installed isn't completely installed because we have some new grass that's coming in to fill in. And then we've got the barbed wire collection. It's one of the most comprehensive collection of barbed wire. And of course, this wagon has been in the possession of the Harlingen Museum for quite some time. It's one of their best nicest artifacts that they have. And of course now we had a stage that was built to kind of give it some elevation so you can see it better, and then of course creating the realistic looking trail with grass and dirt and everything else. Because when we first started the project, the wagon was sitting in the middle of the building, and no walls were up at that point. It was just a wide open floor plan. So that was something that Jessica really wanted to kind of build upon.
We needed to work on this first because since it was taking so much room, we wouldn't have been able to work on the other exhibits as easily.
Yeah, there's gonna be a strong story on the agriculture of Harlingen, because of course for the entire Rio Grande Valley that's been the prevailing force that's driven our development. But we're going to be focusing on the cotton, and quite a bit on the cotton, because Harlingen is synonymous with cotton, has been so for quite a while. But we have a section on here that's going to be cutting the actual cotton itself. One thing is the graphics and the visuals are going to be beautiful. It's going to be very visually driven, as most of the exhibits are. We do have an artifact that's going to be an original scale. It's going to be going here, as is this piece, which I forgot what it's called.
It's the steam whistle
Yeah,
for the sugar mill.
Yeah.
It was there.
And this is the actual scale itself. And we believe this scale, we've done some research on other scales from that period, the early turn of the century. We haven't really found anything comparable, so we believe it was something that was probably produced or fabricated. They probably had paid to actually have it fabricated so it would accommodate what they needed done. So it makes it an extremely unique artifact. Right, this is going to be on
the agriculture. That one is going to be vast because being that this land was very fertile, a lot of different crops were grown here, and we want to just showcase that and just make it a beautiful exhibit with lots of color.
So when you're developing the exhibits, everything's based on a budget. Everything has to come out exactly the way that you're going to produce it. So when you're getting to the printing part, you have to make sure there are virtually no mistakes whatsoever.
We have a budget to work with, so we want to make sure we don't go over it. So.
And want to leverage it wherever we can.
Right.
So in this instance, as a developer, Jessica can go in and make sure everything is situated right. If there's verbiage, we can make sure that it's
not too large.
It's not, we can adjust it. The Wholesome brand. This was a bakery.
Yes.
That was very popular during I think it was in
It's been around for a while. I'm not exactly sure what year we'll get that information.
Yeah, once we have historical information
exactly.
coming on that. But we are happy to say we have actual signage that it was through one of their facilities that they have. It's actually
They're neon letters.
Neon letters. So we have that, and we actually have a track that's going to be built. And this is some. Of course, the rail system was so important during the turn of the century and for quite some time after. And we're going to be kind of showcasing that, as well as the transit, the busing as well. You don't have a society without schools. You gotta have your schools and education. So we definitely want to promote that. A lot of the rich history that had to do with the schools in Harlingen. And we have some unique artifacts, and of course on this side,
The history of
primarily
Valley Baptist
Valley
Hospital.
Baptist and the medical industry itself within Harlingen.
Simulated theater. We're going to have a lot of graphics, mostly photos of vintage time. What is the movie theater that has
showing the concessions.
girls with concessions. They're selling candy and popcorn, and just a lot of different shows that were going throughout that time. And
one of the big things that's really helped us a lot, and Jessica and the entire team and the volunteers to develop this, is repurposing things. We found a lot of different things that we've been able to say, hey, you know what, we can take this, repurpose it. We don't have to buy something. We can actually modify it. Well,
fabricate it. Yes.
One of the case in points to that is this carpet. This carpet looks like it's movie theater carpet, doesn't it? It has that look and feel. This is something that was in storage. It was about to get thrown out. And one of our volunteers saw it and said, wait a minute.
It's perfect.
That's the movie theater carpet. That's it. So boom, there it is. We got it and it's in place. So this is the entire history of, this is military. And a lot, of course, we're going to have sections on the different wars that have tied into Harlingen, from the border wars to World War I, World War II, but also kind of the importance of the military base that was here at that time as well. So we're going to tell that story through artifacts and visuals that we're going to have in this section, and going through a timeline of the wars as well. But we want to, and of course, on this side, we're going to have. There's an incredible collection of artifacts that we have that are weapons from those different time periods.
The Air Force Base, there's a lot of imagery that's going to go in there. And it's just World War II, there's a lot of artifacts we have going in as well. So, and we made that feel of a bunker, a military bunker. So it's just so isolated from the rest of the museum. So
it's almost like
very interesting.
It's like a museum within the museum.
Yes.
In a way.
Yeah.
And then we that's what
Really is.
Yeah, that's what Jessica was shooting for. In this section, we're going to be promoting the Birding Festival, a little bit more of the downtown Harlingen, and then this is going to be the audio video component of the exhibit. So we have several videos that have already been produced that show some of the historical significance of Harlingen and tell different stories, and that's going to be via a flat screen TV that will be a loop, and we'll have several different videos. So this is where the tour kind of ends, and it gives people a chance to kind of enjoy another dynamic. They can actually watch something on video.
Well, this is an amazing space, and you all have gotten everything you can out of it.
Okay. It's come a long ways. There's still some a ways to go, but there's a lot of things that'll be in production soon that will start getting everything filled up, so we can hopefully be ready for the fall. And of course, hopefully things will be better for everybody by then with the pandemic. And we're going on faith that that'll be the case, and we're just designing and building everything accordingly on that.
We look forward to coming and visiting the museum as soon as we're all able to get out and about.
Well, I watched that video, and there's been tremendous progress since even that was shot. The way these projects tend to go, they say the devil is in the details, and there's a whole lot of research and a whole lot of meticulous work that goes into it. And then when you begin to see things like the vinyl wraps and that sort of thing go up, and it all begins to come to fruition. We had initially hoped that we would be opened this fall. Obviously, we all had a bit of a curveball thrown at us in 2020. And, so we're trying to sort of take the good with the bad on that and capitalize on the extra time we have. We still believe that we're going to be open by the end of the year. And we look forward to having the doors open so that our citizens can see it. And we certainly want you guys to come and check it out as well.
We appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions? We thank very much Valerie Bates and Wanda Greenhill for making this possible, for your staff for being available for this filming, and you today being with us. And so we thank you.
Question.
Go ahead,
Quick
please.
question. Monica wanted to know what the address of the museum was.
2425 Boxwood, Harlingen. We are right across from Valley International Airport and TSTC.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Nancy, this is Romaldo from the Robstown Area Historical Museum. I do have a question for Joel. where does the funding come from, or what is your support base for the museum?
We have what is essentially a guild organization, the Rio Grande Valley Museum Association, and one of their roles is to do annual fundraising efforts. In the past, we have done events like our biggest event is, of course, Taste of Harlingen. That's where local restaurants get together, and there's a huge event out here. Obviously, that's not happening this year. On the other hand, we for this particular project, we put together a fundraising committee, and we approached individuals and businesses throughout town. We are still raising money as we go. We were fortunate that HEB stepped to the plate in a huge way for us. We have some private foundation support, and then we have quite a bit of individual support. And you know, as you know, everybody that's in nonprofit, you know, there's an element of panhandling associated with the job. And when there's not enough money there, you kind of have to make up the difference with sweat equity. And so, you know, we try to, you know, in addition to relying on support from the community, we try to be inventive, we try to be creative, and, you know, just like everybody else in this business, you know, make the best with what we have and what's available to us.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? If there's no other questions, we certainly, again, appreciate those of you who are involved in this production of this video. We will have a recording of the entire event today, and it will be sent to everyone who has signed in on our list. And so you'll get to see it all again if you like. And you can look forward to that in a week or so. But for now, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next segment, which is going to be an event that's coming up live in Corpus Christi on Saturday, November 7th. We're going to have Karen Howden, who is with the Nueces County Historical Commission. She's also the president of the Friends of the Old Bayview Cemetery, and she's the driving force behind this event, Voices of South Texas, the Old Bayview Cemetery Walk. Okay, Karen, turn it over to you now.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to share with you a video of our annual event. Old Bayview Cemetery is 175 years old this year, and the Friends of Old Bayview Cemetery Association, along with the Nueces County Historical Commission and a host of other friends, will be presenting our 11th year of Voices of South Texas Old Bayview Cemetery Comes Alive on November 7th from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. This is a walking tour. It's come and go, and it's absolutely free. We are asking everyone to wear a mask and to social distance, and especially to respect the personal space of those storytellers. Some of them will be wearing masks. Some of them have difficulty speaking with a mask, so you'll need to be far enough away from them. But this is November 7th from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. It's a Saturday. And I welcome everybody. I hope to see everybody there.
Welcome to Old Bayview Cemetery here in Corpus Christi, Texas. This is the oldest federal military cemetery in Texas, arguably the oldest west of the Mississippi River. You can walk through Old Bayview Cemetery and you can teach the first half of American history. We have veterans from the War of 1812, which is basically the Empire Strikes Back. We have veterans from the War for Texas Independence, the Mexican War, which actually starts the cemetery, the Civil War, both Union and Confederate, Indian campaigns. We do have a Buffalo soldier here, and we have a soldier from the Spanish-American War. After that, they are buried elsewhere in other cemeteries. Then we have the folks that are just South Texas here, and their life and their story, and the builders and the shakers here. It's only about 4 acres. We have 10 historical markers in here at this time, and we could probably put a dozen more. That's how much of an impact these folks have into the history of South Texas. It is a story. Back in 2000, there was a grant that allowed for the research of those that are buried here.
Hi, I'm Monsignor Michael Howell, and I was active in the research we did for the website for the Laratama Public Library, beginning at the beginning of 2000 or so, with Rosa Gonzalez and Geraldine McGloin. Rosa took pictures of the grave sites. I did research in the library from old microfilm of our local papers, the papers from Picayune and New Orleans, and military records. I would bring them to Geraldine McGloin and we transcribed them for the computers. But we did information on the background of the cemetery, any articles and pictures from it, on all the obits, as many as we could find of the obits of the individuals here, to trace the history and how this impacted the local history. War, some of those buried here though had also participated in the War of 1812, others were here at times of Indian raids, others were here even at the time of the raids on Oasis Town. These were pioneers that had a part not only in the history of Corpus Christi but of Texas and to a certain extent even the United States, since the result of the Mexican-American War also impacted the growth of the United States in terms of the Southwest and California. So it's really it was meant to be a gift of devotion to our history, to make us more aware of those on who we build, because they had a part in truly being here when it was a pioneer area. And it was thanks to their efforts and a lot of suffering, because they went through storms, they went through multiple yellow fever epidemics, they suffered a lot, and yet they persevered. And thanks to their perseverance, we have the city and the area that we enjoy today on the Gulf Coast and in Corpus Christi.
When you look back at the archives in the local newspaper, about every 20 years there's somebody that thinks something needs to be done about the Bayview Cemetery. And for a while people get excited about it and they get some money and they do some renovations and such. But it was never enough, and after a couple of years it just kind of dies away. Well, back in 2009, the Nueces County Historical Commission looked at Old Bayview Cemetery, and we said, you know, it's not enough to wring our hands and write articles about the need for Old Bayview Cemetery. We have to make it important to people. We have to make them understand why this place is important. So we decided to do a cemetery walk where we have storytellers and reenactors come out and tell those stories of these people here, or the events that occurred in South Texas that some of the people who are interred here were part of. So in the spring of 2010, we did our very first Voices of South Texas, Old Bayview Cemetery Comes Alive. And we had almost 400 people, that was an estimate on our part, who came out here to see these stories and to listen to these storytellers and reenactors. It's 4 hours long. That's all we're there, from 10 o'clock until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And people would stop us and say, thank you for telling this story. It needs to be told. I've always wanted to come and look at this place, and you have brought it to life. So the Nueces County Historical Commission understood that it's not just to say, let's preserve it. Nothing will be preserved if it's not important to people. So we decided let's make it important to folks. Well, last November was our 10th Voices of South Texas. Old Bayview Cemetery Comes Alive. We had over 800 people here in a 4-hour period. And once again, folks would say, you know, this is great. We need to hear these stories. And we've expanded every year. We now have reenactors come from Palo Alto National Battlefield. This is where Zachary Taylor's troops go after they leave Corpus Christi. And they tell the story of the war with Mexico in 1846. Of course, some of those soldiers come back to Corpus Christi. They live, they die, they become movers and shakers within Corpus Christi. Within that group of reenactors was a young man who loved telling the story of a privateer in the War of 1812. Guess what? We have a privateer here from the War of 1812, John Dix. So he came out to tell that story. A group of reenactors brought a Civil War replica cannon, a 10-pounder I believe it was, and they demonstrated the firing and the whole mechanisms of that cannon. They were representing the Confederates that were here in Corpus Christi during the Battle of Corpus Christi, where some of those soldiers are buried here in Old Bayview Cemetery. But it really didn't matter. Loading and firing a cannon worked the same way, whether you were Union or Confederate. So we have this lesson that goes on, this not only the storytelling, but the education about what life was like back then. We wrapped up our 9th year of Voices of South Texas. Old Bayview Cemetery Comes Alive. This mosquito's attacking me. And I never would have dreamed that we would have made it this long. When we started this back in 2010, it was a chance to introduce Corpus Christi and South Texas to Old Bayview Cemetery. People have to know the story before they can protect the story, and that's why we started this in the first place. We had so many folks today that were brand new to this. We have folks that came up from the valley. We had the reenactors from Palo Alto National Battlefield, where Zachary Taylor's troops go. We had a Mexican television station up here interviewing some of the reenactors today. This has just grown and spreading our treasure. Next year will be year number 10. I just can't believe it.
Hi, I'm Mary Grace with Maltby. My husband is the town's newspaper editor. You may have heard of him. William Henderson Maltby is his name. He's down there. He was
Ohio in 1837. I moved to Corpus Christi in 1859.
He was our very first mayor, and the city was incorporated in 1852, and he ran for the very first election. He got elected.
Boy, it's dusty down there. Well, hello, folks. Buenos dias. I am Tito Rivera, a citizen of Corpus Christi, who had a long and amazing path to getting to this town.
Daughter of Samuel Moore and Malvina, who are buried right next to me. When my mom came to this area, she was one of the first slaves to come to Corpus Christi.
The Centennial House that's over by the cathedral.
Littleton, Massachusetts, where I was born in 1896. My father, John Sr., fought at Lexington and Concord in 1775. The United States is just kind of bursting as part of me, you know.
Attention! Right? Face! Present arms! Aim! Fire! Aim! Fire! Aim! Fire! Present arms!
Wow, I hope that inspired everyone to come, to make plans to be there on November 7th. Thank you so much, Karen and Mike. Are there any questions? It is a free event. Now, do we know, can you tell the folks, Karen, exactly how to get there?
Well, that's a good question because they're working on that harbor bridge. My suggestion is to, gosh, I don't know what exit will be. I know that Buffalo Street exit is closed. You cannot get there from Buffalo Street exit. You can get there from Karankawa. You can get there from back way from Ocean Drive. But the best thing to do is get up to Karankawa Street and just cross over. You'll run into it. I just wanted to point out that this year is going to be a little bit different than the past years. Several of our storytellers are not able to come. They're not comfortable coming, but the rest of the storytellers said, yes, we want to do this. We want to go forward with this. So it's same thing, but not as many storytellers.
So it's in, for those folks who are not from the Corpus Christi area, it's in the downtown Corpus Christi area near the waterfront, but on the Corpus Christi side of the Harbor Bridge. Do not cross the Harbor Bridge. You'll be in the wrong place.
Really, if they can get to Karankawa Street, if they can come up Karankawa Street, they will run into it, literally run into it. So that I tell people that's the easiest.
Right. If there are no further questions, we're going to go ahead and move forward to our next presentation. It's a book review by Pam Stranahan of Rockport, who is the president of the Friends of the History Center for Aransas County. And this book review is about Connie Hagar, who is and it's called The Life History of a Texas Bird Watcher. Pam, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Everybody today, I really love telling the real stories of the people of Aransas County. And this is a really good one. Every September during our Hummingbird celebration here in Rockport, the Friends of the History Center feature an exhibit about Connie Hagar, whom we call the First Lady of Texas Birders. I think you'll see why when you read this biography.
Connie Hagar, Life History of a Texas Birdwatcher. Written by Karen McCracken, reviewed by Pam Stranahan. This book will persuade you to get outdoors and observe the birds. Connie Hagar's enthusiasm for nature and birdwatching is infectious. Karen McCracken did an excellent job of capturing Connie's story. Karen moved to Rockport as a reporter and as a novice birder was tutored by Connie. Later, McCracken realized that Connie's story should be told. In the summer of 1962, Connie agreed to a series of interviews. Martha Conger Neblett was born in 1886. She grew up in a genteel family in Corsicana, Texas, where her father was a judge and her mother managed the household in the style of a Southern belle. Her younger brother gave her the nickname Connie when he was learning to talk. Connie attended Fort Park College in St. Louis, and she studied piano, voice, which she enjoyed her whole life. After a frustrating marriage to a sailor, Connie left him and returned to Corsicana. She stepped off the train loaded down with a suitcase, a bird cage, and a dog. As she set off for home, a stranger stepped up and said, "Let me help you." He had already taken the suitcase before she replied, "I am Mrs. Lynn Brooks of New Orleans. Come home to care for my invalid mother." Her escort grumbled, "Might have known you would be a Mrs. somebody. All nice women seem to be married." But Jack Hagar was undaunted, and he returned to the Neblett household to court Connie for 5 years before they were married. Connie's best friend was her sister, Bert. They formed a nature study club in 1922. In pursuit of their studies, they visited Rockport for a month in 1933 to learn more about the coast. They then returned in 1934 for 5 months. After the sisters' extended trip to Rockport, Connie convinced Jack to move to Rockport, where they bought the Rockport Cottages on Church Street in 1935. Connie was fascinated by the birds in the wild. Every day after breakfast with Jack, she and her dog visited 9 locations where the birds might be. She made the rounds again in the afternoons, taking copious notes. She was setting a new standard for ornithology. Others in the field were studying stuffed birds, while she observed them in the wild. She began writing a column for the Corpus Christi newspaper, and other birders became aware of her sightings. Connie spent many hours lecturing to adults and children alike. As a result, folks around town brought her birds to heel and let her know if hunters had downed protected species. Texas Parks and Wildlife Department noted her efforts with signage at Little Bay. Jack was innkeeper at the cottages, but also kept things light. One day when Connie returned from her morning rounds, he brought a couple over and introduced them to her. "Darling, these bird watchers would like to see a yellow-rumped, short-sleeved Hagar bird. Folks, this is my wife, Pure Nuts." Connie and Jack enjoyed the birders who came to town, and many stayed at the cottages. They even became lifelong friends with ornithologists who had doubted her earlier reports. But Jack did not like it when someone questioned Connie's reports. After a written exchange with Dr. Oberholzer of the Department of Agriculture, Connie reported to Jack, "He seemed to doubt that I saw a sooty shearwater." Jack's reply, "Nobody can question my wife's word. Throw that letter in the wastebasket and never write him again." Later, when Oberholzer requested a cabin in anticipation of visiting, Jack said, "Can't do it. We're all booked with nice people." Roger Torrey Peterson, however, was one who appreciated her records and invited her to collaborate on his guide for the birds of this area. Other experts return to go birding with Connie, and McCracken's story brings you into the Hagar circle of friends. Connie's fame as a citizen scientist spread nationally when Life magazine sent their top photographer, Alfred Eisenstadt, to photograph her. When she greeted him at the door in her lilac frock with a matching lilac sweater, he was miffed. He asked, "Don't you have something to wear that's more suitable for the outdoors?" So she led him to her closet so he could select an outfit. Though not pleased because he found no shorts, no slacks, no pants of any kind, he chose a charcoal cotton dress with a white collar. He got his shots like this one in her living room and returned to New York City after one day. The 1946 magazine brought Connie fame and even more visitors. While Connie spent a lot of time outdoors, she wasn't the picture of health. She had glaucoma early, which frightened her into following the doctor's advice of drinking 3 beers a day. Later, high blood pressure plagued her. She became less active after Jack's death in 1962, so the National Audubon Society arranged to bring their annual meeting to Corpus Christi in order to honor her. The plaque presented to Connie read, "You opened our eyes to that great miracle of the natural world, the migration of birds. You enriched our knowledge by patient, open-minded, and courageous observation and reporting of facts, so many of them at first unbelievable. You stood so straight among the wind-bent trees of your coast that you saw what others before you have failed to see." Every year during the Rockport-Fulton Hummingbird Celebration, we mount an exhibit at the History Center. Birders who enjoy our gardens also learn about Connie's dedication to recording the hummer migration. A site that honors Connie year-round is the Connie Hagar Cottage Sanctuary at Church and First Streets in South Rockport. Signage there tells the story of the Hagars, the cottages, the birds, and native plants. Come visit to learn more about this remarkable woman.
Great. I apologize for the sound, and I hope that you're interested enough to read the book. And did I hear them say, Pam, that she was supposed to drink 3 beers a day?
Yes, that was the prescription from her doctor for glaucoma. 3
Okay.
beers.
What's her doctor's name? We do thank you. And where can we find this book?
So it's still for sale. We have it at the History Center for sale, several copies of it, so it's available. And certainly every year during the Hummingbird Festival, we bring special copies to the History Center.
When you say the Visitor Center, what do you mean, in Rockport or at the History Center?
Yes, the History Center in Rockport.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? We thank you very much, Pam, and we look forward to next year's Hummer Festival. We weren't able to have it this year. Thank you very much. So now we're going to move on to our final presentation of the day from the Brownsville Historical Association. And we're going to see 2 videos. One is just an overview of the Brownsville Historical Association, and one is about a map collection. And I want to thank Tara Hudnot for working with us on this. I'm going to turn it over to Tara.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to participate in this virtual tour. So yes, you'll see the overall scope of what we do with the association, the museums that we run in the first video. And then I believe Mr. Holtzman is also on this call, and his presentation in the second video talks about a map collection that he donated to our museums several years ago. And it's really special. There's really unique pieces in that collection, and I hope that you enjoy it. Thank you.
The Brownsville Historical Association. The mission of the BHA is to preserve, educate, and promote the history, heritage, and cultural arts of Brownsville, Texas, and its environs through exhibitions, educational programs, publications, cultural events, and archival collections. The Heritage Museum. Open to the public in 2002, the Heritage Museum allows visitors to explore the history of Brownsville through interactive exhibits, bilingual signage, and unique artifacts from the BHA's collection. The Heritage Museum highlights artifacts, maps, photographs, clothing, and displays that document the history of Brownsville, Texas. Discover the origins from the land and region that would flourish and develop into Brownsville. The newest permanent exhibit features the history of the Mexican Revolution and houses one of the largest artifacts in BHA's collection, a 1909 German MAN limo. The Stillman House Museum. The Stillman House Museum is located adjacent to the Heritage Museum. It is Brownsville's oldest brick residential structure, still located at its original construction site. Unchanged by time and its surroundings, the Stillman House offers visitors the opportunity to appreciate what life was like during the 1850s in Brownsville, Texas. The house is named for Charles Stillman, a successful businessman and founder of Brownsville. Market Square Research Center. Built in 1850, Market Square originated as an open-air market where residents of Brownsville and Matamoros alike could purchase meats, vegetables, and other goods. Over the past 167 years, Market Square has been through several transformations, some out of necessity due to damage from a hurricane, and others out of changes from Brownsville civic leaders. At times, the fire department, police department, and city hall all functioned out of Market Square. The building, which is now 1 city block long, is currently the home of BHA's collections and houses archives which can be used when researching Brownsville and its surrounding history. The building is also home to the Into the Wild West exhibit, a collection of bronze sculptures and art donated by the late Ben Edelstein. The Historic Brownsville Museum. Located in the Midi-Cultural District, the historic Brownsville Museum was the former train depot for Southern Pacific Railways, which operated in Brownsville from 1928 until 1956. The museum encompasses a wide range of historical topics, from Brownsville's early history to the Mexican-American, Civil War, and transportation. The museum is known for its Spanish colonial architecture and the fully restored Baldwin wood-burning locomotive. Additionally located on the HBM complex grounds, the Mary Ituria Educational Center houses an array of revolving exhibits and serves as a great venue for business meetings, workshops, and special events. The Laureles Ranch House. The Laureles Ranch House Museum is located in Linear Park and was built by Brownsville founder Charles Stillman in 1850. The house was originally located in the King Ranch area and was relocated to Brownsville in February of 2013. The Laureles Ranch House has been fully restored and serves as an educational resource, showing visitors what ranch life was like in the 1850s in South Texas. The Ranch House Museum grounds are also available for party or event rentals. The Old City Cemetery Center. Located within a block of the historic Brownsville Museum, the Old City Cemetery Center serves to advance lifelong learning opportunities about the history, genealogy, architecture, and folk art customs of the Brownsville Old City Cemetery. The Old City Cemetery Center utilizes exhibits, educational programs, and cultural events in order to facilitate learning about our Old City Cemetery and its past. The historic Alonso Building. The historic Alonso Building was built in 1877 by Spanish-born Manuel Alonso. Later in 1890, Alonso constructed an additional second story, which housed the family's mercantile commerce business and was a popular gathering spot for local residents. French and Spanish influences are notably observed throughout the interior and exterior of the building. The Alonso Building, along with its flourishing and verdant courtyard, are available for rent and present an ideal scenic and serene backdrop for any event. The Brownsville Historical Association.
I believe that I saw a question from Virginia about the narrator. Tara, can you tell us who was the narrator for that video? You know?
Yes, he has a great voice, doesn't he? His name is Eric Gonzalez, and he's actually a member of our staff part-time. So yeah, if you needed his contact information, I can get that to you.
Thank you. Now, would you move on to the next video? Tara, you have anything you want to say about the video before it begins?
Well, I don't, Mr. Holtzman is here. Mr. Holtzman, did you want to add anything?
Hello, everybody. I was the narrator for this one. I'm not as good as Eric, but in any case, I've collected maps all my life. I think antique maps are truly, truly wonderful, and I donated my maps to the Brownsville Historic Museum, and so what you'll see is a brief presentation about the maps. Enjoy, and if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them afterwards. Thank you.
Hey everybody, my name is Aubrey Nielsen and I'm the collections manager with the Brownsville Historical Association. Today we will be discussing 3 different maps donated by Larry Holtzman, and who's here to discuss them with us.
Hello, my name is Larry Holtzman. I live in Brownsville, Texas. I collect antique maps and I'm an amateur historian. I've been collecting antique maps pretty much all my adult life. My maps are now at the historic Brownsville Museum. I'm going to talk about 3 maps that will take us on a Texas history journey. This 1702 map is a French map. Although most maps of Mexico and New Spain are Spanish, this is a French map, and it's an interesting map because it was printed in Paris, France. This 1702 map is of New Spain, including Mexico, by the famous cartographer to King Louis XIV, Nicolas de Feur. Now this is the first map in the world that shows the Mississippi River exactly where it is placed in geography, because the French were the first ones to have a map that showed the Mississippi accurately, because the Mississippi River, mouth of the Mississippi River, was discovered in 1682 by the French explorer La Salle. And he claimed the huge Mississippi River basin for France, for his King Louis XIV, and he called it Louisiana. And that later became, 121 years later, the Louisiana Purchase. Now, if we'll look, the Gulf of Mexico, La Salle returned to France and convinced the king to finance an expedition through the Gulf of Mexico to put a French settlement at the mouth of the Mississippi. In 1684, LaSalle with 300 colonists came into the Gulf of Mexico. Instead of the mouth of the Mississippi, LaSalle landed at Matagorda Bay, which he named. Here you can see the Bay of St. Louis. He founded his French settlement there near present-day Victoria, Texas in 1685. Here you can see the location is marked on this map with a flag. This is the French flag that is one of the 6 flags over Texas. Now think about it. Why couldn't Texas be part of the Louisiana Purchase? Although short-lived, LaSalle's was the first European settlement in Texas. The Spanish settlement of San Antonio was established 33 years later in 1718. Now we can see that how close the village of Cenis is. LaSalle visited and traded with this Caddo Native American village of Cenis. It was a large village. The Cenis villagers greeted European visitors with cries of Tejas, meaning friend and ally. This was the introduction of a word that became Texas in Spanish, or Texas. LaSalle's flagship La Belle sank in Matagorda Bay. The beams of this ship and artifacts were recovered by the Texas Historical Commission in 1997. The La Belle and its artifacts are at the Bullock, Texas State Historic Museum. Other museums around Texas also have artifacts from the La Belle. One last note, and here on this French map is a cartouche showing the mines of Santa Barbara. You will not see this on any other map. Certainly not a Spanish map. Many historians say that instead of faulty navigation, LaSalle intended to land in Texas so he could be close to the mines with the intent of attacking the mines. After all, he had promised his king, as part of the deal to get the money for the settlement, that he would be attacking Spanish wealth. Now we're going to an 1835 map of Mexico. Now it's Mexico, which got its independence from Spain in 1821. In this map of Mexico of 1835, we can see the huge territory of Mexico at the time, from the Yucatan all the way to California, including Texas. President of Mexico and General of the Mexican Army, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, proudly ruled over this vast land. Texas was sparsely populated, so Mexico encouraged Americans to establish colonies like the Austin colony, shown on the map, led at the time by Stephen F. Austin. The requirement was that the colonists become good Mexican citizens and convert to Catholicism. Well, what could go wrong with that? This 1835 map would be the last to show Texas as part of Mexico. In the following year, Texas would get its hard-fought independence under the leadership of Sam Houston. Then in 1848, after the Mexican-American War, the United States would complete its manifest destiny with a territory that would become Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Colorado, and California. Now we go to an 1888 map of Fort Brown. Fort Brown was the first U.S. Army outpost in Texas, built in 1846 at the start of the Mexican-American War. The Palo Alto close by was the first battle of the Mexican-American War, fought by Zachary Taylor in marching down to relieve Fort Brown, which was being bombarded. The city of Brownsville, founded by businessman Charles Stillman, grew later alongside the fort. Here is a map of Fort Brown military outpost in 1888. The fort area was improved during the Civil War and later used as a military outpost until it was deactivated in 1945. Here you see on the reference list the buildings included officers' houses, barracks, a hospital, stables, and other buildings. Today, this is the location of Texas Southmost College and the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley. Many of the military buildings are still there and have been restored and are in use, such as the hospital, which is the administration building for Texas Southmost College. We can see that 2 blocks from Fort Brown on Washington Street is Charles Stillman's residence, built in 1848. It has been restored and is part of the Brownsville Historical Association. Thank you. I enjoy talking about maps. Maps to me are historic artifacts as well as works of art, and they're excellent for historic research. Very important, and I recommend that they be looked at more often. As you can see on the 1702 French map, there are items on the map that are not in narrative history. So it is important, and we have these maps here at the Historic Brownsville Museum. And Brownsville, I recommend you come visit. It's a Main Street city. The Central Business District has been honored by being accepted on the National Register of Historic Places. So come visit us here at the Historic Brownsville Museum in Brownsville, Texas. Thank you.
I see there was a question. How many maps were donated? Do you know?
There's approximately 50 antique maps. They're of historic nature of Texas and Mexico, and I would say that the star of the map collection was that 1702 French map.
Thank you. Any other
Nancy?
questions?
Nancy?
Yes.
This is Pat.
Yes.
Could you ask Pam Stranahan to give the hours of the History Center and the address of it for people who might want to visit?
Pam, are you here, please, still?
You bet. Our History Center is located at 801 East Cedar Street in Rockport. And we're open 4 days a week. We're open on Mondays and Fridays, 10 to 2, and on Saturday and Sunday afternoons, 1 to 4. So we have a lot of time visitors can come. Presently, we are practicing wearing masks as they come in. Only 6 people at a time can be in the building. And we ask people to move through if there are others who are waiting to come in. So we're welcoming people at the History Center currently. Yes. Thanks,
Thank
Pat.
Any questions for Mr. Holtzman on his map collection? Okay, then I'm going to turn it over to Valerie Bates.
This is Valerie Bates. I'm the chair of the Texas Tropical Trail Region Board. And so I'd like to thank Mike Carlisle for all his technical expertise behind the scenes that made this run as seamlessly as it can possibly be with so many moving parts. Also Penny Pelak, Wanda Greenhill, Rick Stryker, Bart Wales, Edward Meza, Marlette Bond, Lori Bellows. This is the team that keeps this going. And, oh, thanks for that, Mike. And I know a lot of us noticed the embedded tribute to Anita Eisenhower in Mike's video of the cemetery, and we sure do miss her. Really like to thank Joel and the consultants at the Harlingen Museum for the behind the scenes look. And Karen, thanks so much for your voice, for the voices of the cemetery. Pam, as usual, you do a great job. Your passion for Rockport and history of that area, the coastal bend, and your leadership, well, hats off. Tara, thanks so much again for all your hospitality at the Brownsville Museum. Larry, I am planning a visit to check out the maps, and we just appreciate everybody joining us today and in the months past for this different experience. And we're doing our best to stay connected and keep history alive. So we thank you all. If you have any questions or anything to add, please leave them in the chat. Nancy answers everything. And thanks so much to Nancy, of course, for being the owner today. And I guess we are adjourned. And now, as Rick Stryker would always say, is the funnest part of our day, which is our board meeting. So we'll be starting our board meeting in about 10 minutes.
Thank you all.